Good evening, everybody. Okay. This nice, wonderful, cold winter day. I just flew in from Orlando yesterday, and it was just as bad there on Tuesday. And Father Nico had been up in Buffalo, and he came back on Monday afternoon, and we just claimed that he brought the cold weather down with him. It was freezing in Buffalo. And he seems to be doing very well, though, in the parish there. Beautiful parish. I was pastor down there in the mid-'90s and then lived there for a couple of years and then moved over to the parish next door. So in all, I've spent 13, 14 years in Orlando, so it's kind of old home, and ran into friends I've known forever. So kind of nice. And I was there with my sister and one of my nephews and his daughter. Okay. So tonight, we're going to finish up with the Sacrament of Penance and get ready for next week, where we're going to be celebrating the Sacrament of Penance for, most likely for your children for the first time. And we're going to take a look at how the Church celebrates those sacraments. There are three different ways in which we celebrate the Sacrament of Penance. We're just going to recap a little bit about what we've looked at already, and then just to get that immediate preparation for the sacrament with your children. Okay. The Church in recent times has taken a fresh look at the Sacrament of Penance. Ever since the Second Vatican Council, it said, let's look and see how the sacrament's been celebrated traditionally over the years. How do we bring back what was good and valuable? And at the same time, how do we let go of the stuff that was misinterpreted or misunderstood? And that's the Sacrament of Penance was one of those. We talked about how in the past there was first no real Sacrament of Penance at all, baptism. You were baptized. If you were a committed Christian, you're going to live out your baptismal call. You didn't get baptized cheaply or easily because baptism was for adults and their families originally. So you didn't go around baptizing children as children unless their families were already in the church. It was times of persecution, and so to become a Catholic meant to put your life on the line in many places and many times. And so people didn't just haphazardly, half-heartedly jump in. And so that was perfectly fine for about 300 years. And any sins you may have committed, they were forgiven in the penitential rite at Mass and by the fact that Jesus Christ's death and resurrection is celebrated at Mass. And so we look at the saving power of that sacrament, the saving power of the Eucharist itself to forgive us our sins and to change us and to transform us. We really have three different sacraments and the Eucharist that all help us with the forgiveness of sins. Baptism at first, to forgive all the sins that you've committed before baptism. The Sacrament of Penance, once it was started to be celebrated. And also, attached to the Sacrament of the Sick are prayers about God's forgiving our sins as well by the holy anointing that we receive. And so when I anoint someone, it's by this holy anointing, may the Lord in his love and mercy save you by the power of the Holy Spirit. May the Lord who frees you from sin save you and raise you up. And so the sacrament of the anointing and prayers for the sick have a sense of forgiveness of sins. And in fact, the Church attaches to the final prayers. We don't have extreme unction, one last sacrament of the sick, but we have an on-rolling thing. When you're sick, seriously so, you can ask to be anointed. When you get sicker, you can ask to be anointed again, to be visited, to be prayed for. When you get seriously ill, we'll anoint you again and help you to get ready for death. When you're on your deathbed, then the sacrament, if you're able to, receive is the sacrament of viaticum, receiving the body and blood of Christ as food for the journey to heaven. And then we have prayers for the dying, prayers for those recently died, prayers for the family. We have wake services, we have funeral services, and we have burial services. A sacrament that's really stretched out for as long as you need it. Sometimes you're healed and restored to life, short time, long time, whatever. Other times you die soon afterwards. Okay, that's the third of the fourth sacraments of the sick. And then the Eucharist is seen as the ultimate sacrament of reconciliation, by which Jesus reconciles and saves the world. And so the power of the Eucharist itself is there to save us. So over the years, the sacrament of penance grows until we start looking at sin and confession as admitting that we're sinners and making up for what we did. It's atonement. It's paying the price, the earthly punishment due to sin by taking on a penance, taking on something less, helping us in some ways to change. And that was always part of the sacrament, that it wasn't just let's just wipe things off today and go back to what we did before. Yeah, I know when I was a kid, we would go on sad days, and if it was a slow Saturday afternoon, we'd go many times. I lived across the street from the church, so it was really easy to just go over and kill 10 minutes at confessions. And one of the last things we'd say is, "Oh yeah, Father, thank you. We'll see you next week." Yeah, I just promised that I would never sin again. And then I go like, "Oh yeah, I'll see you next week." Now that was the honest thing I said. The nice intention I had was never to sin again, but that didn't normally work. After that, then we focused much more into confession. And the important part of confession was that we're really, really sorry for what we did. And we really, really, really did intend that we would not sin again. And part of the priest role in the sacrament of penance, of confession, was to make sure we were sorry enough. And some idiots took it too far until we were crying or shaking or sobbing or, rolling around on the floor and say, "I'll never do this again." Then and only then we're sorry enough so that he could forgive us. And that's nonsense. It's not my role or any priest's role to make you feel miserable. It's to help you to feel better, help you to experience the love and care of God. Part of the problem with any of the sacraments is you can read the scriptures and you can get a different interpretation of all kinds of things. You can look at the scriptures where Jesus is kind of putting down the scribes and the Pharisees because they're going around judging others. And then 2 chapters before in the Gospel of Luke, the story of the prodigal son, where the son goes away, he leaves the family, he wastes all the father's money, his own share of the inheritance, and then he comes back, and the first thing the father says to him, "Oh, you stupid fool, get out of here, I don't want," no. He says, "You're my son, welcome back. Let's celebrate." And even he confronts the perfect brother, and the perfect brother doesn't want to come to the party because that son of yours, look what he did. He wasted all his money. He wasted all your money. He hated you. He hated me. We can't have anything to do with him. And the father goes, No. This son of mine was dead. He was no longer a part of my life. And now he's back. He was lost, and now he's found. So we get together and we celebrate. And we make up for what the son did, and we make sure that he doesn't do that again by treating him well, not by scolding him, not by punishing him, not by making him feel inferior, but making him feel that he can do better things. And so when we start looking at the sacrament of penance from that perspective, that changes to what we have today. And whenever someone comes to confession, it comes in one of three ways. We'll do the easiest one first. It's almost never celebrated. It's celebrated when there is massive danger coming, traditionally on the night before D-Day. I was just watching a war movie thing earlier today. And, the night before D-Day, all these chaplains were out giving general absolution to everybody because half of the people who were going over to D-Day invasions thought that wouldn't make it off the beaches. Thank God more made it off the beaches than died there. But some of the first waves, people were just massacred. And so, we have a sacrament of penance. A third way of celebrating it is general absolution. There's a penance service. People gather together. They admit to God only what they have done. And then the priest gives a general absolution to everybody and forgives them all, with the understanding that the next time you go to confession, the things you should have said, tell the priest at that time. So it's a stopgap measure. If you're on an airplane, I was on an airplane yesterday, if you're on an airplane, all of a sudden it's crashing down, I can give you general absolution, whether you're Catholic or not. And if we all crash and die, we go straight to heaven. If we don't crash and die, then we still get forgiven. So that's one way of forgiving sins. It's been there for years. It's shrunk down in usage, and instead we've found two different ways. One is the more traditional confession. You go to a priest in a separate place, whether it's in a room or here on weekdays. We hear confessions out in the narthex, and we put on a noisemaker so that you either hear water or waves, or if I push the wrong button, you get lullaby and good night. But it's a way of saying what you've done, of me as priest giving you some advice. Now, sometimes I don't give advice because you've been doing the same thing 25 different times in different ways, and you'll tell me that, Father, I'm still doing this, and my response is try to do a little bit better, try to cut down, try to be more focused, try to not do it by yourself, use God's help. And usually with those kind of people, I'll just say, and try to do an act of kindness or helpfulness for someone else, because it's not all about you. The world is bigger than you, and part of what we need to do is we have to stop doing the things that we shouldn't be doing, but we should also start doing the things we should be doing. So when we say the Confiteor now, we confess what we have done and what we should have done as well. It should be the same thing with your kids, whether they're going to individual confession or whether they're coming to a penance service. Now, the tone of a penance service is, of course, totally different for young people and for family groups and for the parish when it gets together. First, we recognize that we're in this together as a situation. We're all getting ready, sometimes for Christmas, sometimes for Easter. We all know that we all do things that are wrong. And just like in Lent, we try to all do our personal thing to somehow change who we are, change our lives. Same with the sacrament of penance. It might all be a different way of doing it. So there's not just one way we change our lives, but that's what we should be looking after in the end, is that somehow we are better, different people. That we take what we've done and try to discern ways of being better. And some of those things are just, not beating ourselves up when we don't do something, but kind of recognize, people come and say things like, I don't help every poor beggar in the street, and neither do I. And, I'm not sure if that person really needs help or they're just looking for a lot of money. And I don't know that either. And I have a choice. I can give them a sandwich, and they can throw it away as soon as I leave if they're polite, or before I leave if they're not polite. Father Ray was famous when he was in England. He would make sandwiches for people who were hungry, and they wanted money for liquor. And so they'd thank him, and before he got a chance to get back into the house, they would throw the sandwiches over the bushes. And the next morning, he would find 5 or 6 sandwiches just kind of lying out there. And he would get awfully frustrated with that. And the thing is, when you do a good deed, when you do something helpful for another person, that's good. Don't ruin it by making them be grateful, by making them be thankful, by making them want to eat, that peanut butter and jelly sandwich that you gave them with dried peanut butter and with stale bread. But always be grateful for them. Sometimes people are amazingly honest when they come in looking for help. And when I was in England, they would treat the rectory like a pawn shop. That's P-A-W-N. It's not how I pronounce it. When you're from Boston, you have to be really careful about how you pronounce those things. Because I remember telling my mom I was in Vegas and I went to a pawn shop, and she thought I went to a porn shop. And it was no, I wasn't buying pornography. I was going with actually the silver and gold pawn shop that's pawnbrokers on TV. But anyway, so these people would come in and say, Father, I'll give you this wedding ring as collateral for a loan. And it's like, keep your wedding ring. I'll give you a loan. Next time I see you, though, don't ask for more money unless you start to pay back the loan. And I actually had this one guy who was pretty good. He would borrow $40 and 40 pounds, because it was England. And every once in a while, he'd come back and go, here's a $5, or here's 10 quid. And he'd get close to paying me back, and then he'd say, I get stuck again. I have a bill to pay. Any chances? Yeah, you've been good at bringing some money back. So yeah, here you go. And try again. And if you bring money back, then I can have money to help the next poor person that needs some money. So, that kind of changing who you are is part of the sacrament. Not punishing yourself, not being mean to yourself, not beating your breast and hitting yourself with a hammer because it feels so good when you stop. But it's just trying to do your best to see, how do I really make the most out of my life and the most out of other people's lives? How do I do stuff? How do I do good stuff? And so that's a part of the sacrament of penance. And so, I'll tell people, go and try to do an act of kindness for someone when you have the chance. And I do that for 2 reasons. One is that too many times we just look at ourselves. It's me and God, and I don't really care that much about other people. And the second thing is that a lot of people's sins are, just not even aware of the hurt or pain or problems they're causing or helping to make better. It's, when I do stuff, it's different when I'm in a relationship or not in a relationship. Somebody on the street can be very offensive to me and say all kinds of inappropriate words. And if I don't know who they are, I can just simply say, gee, it's too bad. He's a jerk, or she's really being foolish, or she's impolite. And it kind of goes off my back, and I don't get worried about it. If it's somebody who I care about, and they use the same words, think about, if your children or your spouse or somebody who you think is a good friend just lays into you and starts swearing at you and calling you a fool or an idiot or any of those kinds of things, that's much more hurtful. That's much more, you expect better from them. And so the hurt that's there is more than they use bad words. The hurt that's there is, he or she is trying to hurt my marriage. He or she is breaking our relationship. He and she or she is ruining our brother and sisterhood, our friendship with one another. And we begin to realize the power that sin has in our world and the power that good has in our world. And so sometimes we just have to change our attitude. It's amazing how a lot of parents will help their children to understand that well. I find it amazing the amount of kids who will say, I want to be a better brother. I want to be a better sibling. I want to spend time with my younger brother, and maybe we can become friends. People realizing that there's something more than not beating him up or her up or causing them to cry or being mean to them. And instead, the good things are, how do I do positive, great things for somebody else? And so with kids, they often get it. When they're stuck and it's like, you have any sins you committed? No, nothing that I can think of. So, okay. Is there anything you do better or anything you want to do differently? And that's where the truth comes out. Is maybe I need to listen to my mom more often. Or when you hear moms or dads, maybe I need to spend some more time with my kids. Maybe I need to be more patient. Maybe I need to stop yelling. Maybe I need to stop punishing. All of those type of things that actually are counterproductive to my life and to the life of the family. And, again, because we're looking at how do I change, I might give a parent, the penance, go home and tell your children you love them. Do something nice for your kids. Sit down and play a game with them. Get them all to be better family together. Welcome them, party with them. Let them know when you're sorry. Also let them know when you're hurt. How many of you yell at your kids because they don't listen to you? Any takers? Oh, well, one person, one honest one. Okay, a few. Okay. How many of you then go back and tell your children you're sorry that you said that, did that, get angry with them? Yeah, because that's not the way we're supposed to be treating them. We are supposed to make it known that, yeah, I'm sorry, I lost my temper. And if I don't repair that pretty quickly, and I say, oh, I was right, they deserved it. They don't listen to me. I can yell at them, punish them, give them as many timeouts as I want, take away their phones, and do all those kind of things because I'm bigger, I'm better, I can control. And all of that is a way to disaster when we think that, because I'm bigger, they have to do it my way. Because there are going to be times where I'm going to need them to help. I am going to need their love and care and support. I'm going to cherish the special times that we had together. I was saying, I was with my 8-year-old grandniece and with her grandmother. And, Becky at times would get more tired than I am. And she would say, oh, you guys go ahead and go on the rides, and I'll just sit here and relax in the sun. My mother would do that all the time. She didn't go on rides, but she'd just work on her tan and just relax. But being proud of her children having fun. My dad would go on all the rides with us because that's how he loved to build up his relationship with us. And we enjoyed it. As I grew up, I worked for my dad when I was in college. He was the boss in a major factory, and I was one of the workers in the lab, quality control. And my workmates were all his friends. And what a weird thing that is, to go out with my dad's friends to the bar with my dad, and everybody knows him in a whole different way than they know me. And they all knew I was becoming a priest. And so first thing on Monday morning, they would say to me, oh, did you go out checking out churches again? And I said, no, I've been to enough of them already. So unless you want to come, I'll take you with me next time I go. But we could have fun together, and enjoy one another's company and learn from each other. And that was so enlightening and so fun and enjoyable. And that becomes a part of life. My sister and one of my cousins, Michelle just turned 60. We went on the European Griswold vacation. You ever saw the summer vacations with Chevy Chase and the boys, where they went to places? Well, we spent 40 days in a car in Europe, and I did the driving. And we had a great time most days. And then other days you had to just put up with it and treat them as they were feeling or not feeling, given their circumstances. But, we had a wonderful time. We have wonderful memories. We talked about it. We're talking about how we went to Pisa one night, getting off the beach, how they had too much touring, so we just stopped and played by the pool or by the ocean. Just interesting ways of doing stuff and enjoying each other's company. And because we didn't have to see everything and do everything and pressure each other to, be involved, and we could do what we wanted. And when we wanted to relax, we relaxed. We wanted to go out for a few drinks, we went out for a few drinks, whatever it was. And that was fun. And that was the expectation. And a lot of times we need to set up the right expectations for things, and we have to do it together. I love to go on vacation, but not normally alone. I'll go with other people. I'll pay their way to go with me, just so that sometimes I have more money or more air miles or whatever I have, and I also want their company, and so, that's an easy enough thing to do with them, and it was, I told my sister next year I'm celebrating my 50th year as a religious, and so on August 15th, we're getting together here, and we're going to celebrate here in church. And she says, "Oh, I've got a week at the Cape, but I'll change it." It wasn't, she didn't wait until they said, "Oh, don't worry about it, you don't have to come," But, the right response was, "I'll change it, I'll be there." Same with, other times when I go up north, it's like, "Hey, I'm going to be up for meetings, how about if I come over a few days?" And she told me, "Oh, that one, you can't come at the end, we're going someplace, but if you come 2 days earlier, we'll find some time for you." And so, we just worked that out. And it doesn't mean that she doesn't like me or, I don't control a lot of those schedules when I make up meetings, and I don't call her when I have a community meeting. I just call and say, "Hey, I'm going to be in the area. You around? Okay. You're not? I'll find somebody else to visit." And that's fine. And you do the best you can, and you let people be people. And that's the way you have to develop your whole family. And so what you're looking at are the ultimate goals. What's your dreams and hopes for your family? What's the most important things that you want them to do, to enjoy life, to be loved, to love you and care for you as you love them? And when we teach those things well to people, then they become those kind of people. When we give them good example, then that's great. And so when we look at that middle sacrament of penance, we do it in two ways. We start with the penance service. And so next Thursday night, when you come, we'll do a short little prayer service. I'll do the sign of the cross. I'll say a greeting. We'll hear a little bit of the scriptures, and after that, I'll talk to you and them about what the scriptures are saying to us. Together, we'll say an act of contrition, letting God know we're sorry for what we're going to do. And then 5 of us, Father Joe and myself, Father Lamartine and Father Jintz and Father David, will all be spread around the front of the church, and we'll give each one of the kids a chance to come up. And in the last 10 years, they've had 2 kids. They had one last penance service who just started crying, and she was just afraid, and that was fine. And so I wasn't going to make her do anything, and just try to help her to calm down and let her go without saying anything important to me. And Mom came up and picked her up and brought her over. And the second time for penance, we have a second time, usually around March or so. She came and saw me then. We used to do it in school, and the same thing. There was one kid, she just didn't want to get out of her pew. We had 300 kids from our Catholic school, and she was the one that didn't want to go. And so, some teacher was saying, "Oh, no," and it's like, just leave her alone. Don't worry about it. She doesn't go today. She doesn't go today. She's not done anything she's going to hell for. So, just relax. And that's a part of doing penance services. so that you feel positive about it. You see other kids who go and leave smiling, leave laughing, leave happy, leave with a better sense of who they are. And then you go over and you do some activity in the hall. And we're talking about what you're going to do. And Jenny still hadn't decided yet, but Jenny and Isabella will figure out what the kids are going to do afterwards. And the other important thing that we will always make the time to hear your confessions if you want to come. And that's so critically important, that you show to your children that the sacrament is useful, the sacrament is important, the grace of God, knowing that you're loved, knowing that no matter what it is that you have done, it's forgivable, it's all right. We give you the grace and help to move on. We don't yell at you, we don't scream at you. I have better things to do than remember what you told me. I have maybe like 5 confessions that I can remember who said what and where, and it's only because of the way they said it. And it's like, but who said it to me or how, what they said, I could hardly remember. After I finished confessions, I just spent a minute or two in prayer, asking the Lord to help everyone who came to me so that I gave them God's love, that I gave them the impression that God cares for them, that they are forgiven, that they are worthy, that they are special. That's my job. That's how I take the place of God in that sacrament. And if you leave not feeling good, sometimes because of what you confess, you might still be a little upset or still be a bit concerned about what you said. But my job is not to make you feel worse about it. My job is to help you to put it into proper perspective. And that's what I'll do with all of you kids, and that's what the other 4 priests who are there with us next Thursday will do the same thing. Try to help you or them, your kids, to understand that God loves them just as you love them, even when they're not doing the things you want them to do, And the things that they do wrong are not soul-destroying, Sometimes they drop something and break something that's important. They get thrown out of the Cub Scouts. There were 3 of us playing football in our den mother's basement, and the 2 of us who were not her son got thrown out because we broke something. Ken was the one who actually broke something, but he had to live with his mother, so it was like, okay, fine, we don't need this. So when I was 6th grade, I got thrown out of Scouts, and they invited me to come back, and it's like, nah, I don't think so. It's fine. And it was, and I still would hang around with Ken and stuff. We just didn't go in his house because his mother never forgave us for breaking her favorite lamp or whatever stupid thing we did. And it was her house and his football, and he should have known better than, But he didn't, and that's fine. And, what's it really matter in the long run? So, how do you get ready for that kind of celebration? Well, the first thing to do is help your kids to focus in on change. How do I need to grow? How do I need to be better? How do I need to be different? How do I need to stop, some of the stuff that's really annoying, okay? And then help them to figure out what's a way to move beyond, If you have something that irritates you all the time, let your kids know that that's bothersome, that's uncaring, that's inconsiderate, that's taxing and trying to you. If you have, a group of, the bigger the group, the worse it is. Like on a Sunday morning, you want to get to church, you want to be there on time, and all of a sudden somebody has to go to the bathroom for the 13th time in the morning, and you're in the car and you're waiting for them. It happens to all of us still. How do you deal with that? And just go like, okay, this Sunday morning, let's do it calm. Let's be prepared. Let's know what we're going to do, when we're going to do it. We always joke, my last two major parishes were Hispanic majorities. And so Spanish, some like other people, just have their own time. One of my nephews, it's regular time and it's Dustin time. And so we'll set Dustin time as 10 minutes before regular time so that he might be there on time. Otherwise, if I tell him we're leaving at 10, that means at about 10 o'clock he might get out of bed and then start moving towards the door at about 10:15. If you tell him we're leaving at 9:45 and then when he comes to the door at 10, which is where I really want to leave, then we're fine. And sometimes that's what it takes. Or, you just know that if you want your children to do something, you do it with them. If you want the kids to take out the garbage, you do it with them. You want your kids to walk the dog, you do it with them. Especially on a cold night. Oh, it's so cold, I don't want to go out, you go out. I had a dog door in my house when I had my little Yoda. It's like, okay, Yoda, go. And he went outside by himself. But on a really cold night, I would go out with him so that he would at least stay and do his business before he came back in, and then have to do that all over again 10 minutes later. So when we share the responsibilities in the two ways, one is that, what you do really bothers me and really gets me upset. Could we not do it that way? Just a real direct, caring way of dealing with it. So I don't have to yell at you. I don't have to scold you. I don't have to take away, your cell phones or your TV time or your friend time or any of those kind of things. It's like, let's just find a better way that we can do this together. And it's amazing how that can really work. I always tell people that, if you're going to give them a new chore to do for the first week or two, do it with them. You wanted to get them to clean their room, clean it with them. You want them to pick up their clothes, your husband or your wife or whomever, you want them to pick up your clothes. Don't just yell and scream at them for not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Do it with them. Come on, honey, let's go. We're going to clean up. We're going to do this together. We're going to rake the leaves together. All those kind of things, rather than, this is your responsibility. Here's your honey-do list, and you get and do this. And 3 months later is, you get and do that. And 4 months later, you have it in a folder, and it's now crystallized and covered in plastic so that it doesn't get dirty, but nothing gets done either. And so a lot of times it's let's do that together. And it's amazing. It works better with your spouse at times than with your children. Other times it'll be better with your children because, how did Tom Sawyer get that house, the fence painted? He get all the people to know that how much fun it is to paint. I have no idea if I told you the story about, I had two friends, one from St. Louis and one from Houston, and we went to college together, and they came over to my house for Thanksgiving because it was too far for them. I was 2-hour drive away, and they were 4 or 5 hour flight. And we had 24 inches of snow that Thanksgiving. I lived in one of the snow belts up north. And so we're going down to my aunt's house, and there were some cars stuck in the road, and they just loved pushing cars stuck in the road, to get them out of the ruts and get them going again. It was like, just this real fun day, wet and drizzly and awful and cold, but they enjoyed it. Next day, my dad goes, "Hey, Jim, can you go out and snow blow the yard for me?" And I said, "Yeah, fine, Dad." So they came out with me. They took the snow blowers away from me. I had an electric one and a gas one, and they each took one, and they plowed our driveway. They plowed our front lawn. They plowed our side lawn. They plowed some of our neighbors' lawns. Then we had to go out and make a snow castle and throw snowballs around. I just wanted to get inside. It was so cold, and they just wanted to have fun. Because for this one kid from Houston, he had never in his life seen snow, never played in it. After a while in college, we used to take him skiing, and John just loved going skiing, and sometimes he'd love doing some strange things. We're going down one slope, and he fell right in front of a snowmaker. And a snowmaker is just a big gun that shoots water and air out into the air and makes snow and falls down. Well, he had his butt right in front of the snowmaker, and he had this big, huge swirl of ice attached to his backside. And we were just laughing our heads off, and he couldn't figure out why we were laughing until he reached back, and everything was frozen solid behind him. You know, but then he just loved it. He just, hey, this is fun. You know, this is something that's new. And so when you do those kinds of things and you do them together, great things happen. So, you know, when you want to change stuff, you know, especially if the whole family needs to kind of change your attitudes or what you choose to do or those kind of things, you know, do it together. Take turns. You know, teach people how to, you know, not always to have everything go their way. You know, and so how do we share that? How do I share with my younger brother or sister? Yeah, my dad taught us very quickly how to do it. We went every year at Christmas time to Boston. We went to the big stores, to Macy's and to Jordan Marsh, and my dad would give us each $50 and say, okay, buy your Christmas presents. And so Mike's a year older than me, would be like, okay, let's get this game. And so we each paid for half the game, and it was ours because we're going to use that together. Then there were other things like, I want that one myself. They'd be like, fine, yeah, you spend your money on that, and I'll borrow it sometime. It's like, yeah, okay, fine, but it's mine. And then he would buy his stuff. And we learned how to share, you know, just by that wonders of Christmas time. And my dad was smart enough not to fight or argue with us. And it's like, that's your money, you go do it. You buy stuff that I would never buy, but that's no problem with me. And that's how God treats us, doesn't he? You know, he lets us do things, even if it's the wrong things, always willing to forgive us, always willing to guide us at times, but also to give us that freedom to make the small little bad choices. And that's how we learn as people. And so that second sacrament of penance is really just a way of helping us to make our own decisions, make us look at our own lives, and seeing how do I change that. And so it's not necessarily the big sins. You know, big sins of kids are, you know, I don't obey my parents, I lie, I swear, I beat up my sister, my brother, my friends. You know, we know how to deal with most of those ourselves after a while. But it's, you know, it's the being able to grow in a better way. You know better than I do, and just like I know better than you do, what my brothers or sisters' sins are, what they do right, what they do wrong, what they like to do, you know, what their favorite food is, what they do not eat, you know, and we just, you know, understand and put up with it. And, you know, I'm not going to argue with my sister as to, you know, why she should not be eating salmon. She likes salmon, I don't. That's her choice. You know, talking to Father David, he says, oh, I love a T-bone steak. Yeah, and I go like, I don't do bones. I don't do anything with bones. I don't do pork chops. I don't do T-bone steaks. I don't do ribs. You know, I don't do fish if it has a bone in it. You know, that's just my really picky thing about life. And, you know, he likes what he likes. I like what I like. And we're very happy with that. You know, I would be unhappy if I had to eat what he eats. You know, Father Nico was one of the ones who was infamously bad for making the spiciest stuff in the world, that even Father David, who's from the same country, would not touch any of his food. Yeah, because of the way he cooks very, very spicy. But it's like, you know, hey, we just be respectful of one another. Okay? Is that all making sense to you? Okay? Okay. Now, what I suggest to you in the next week, the sooner the better, is just have a family talk. Just get everybody together who's going to come to the penance service. And start with yourself and just say, one of the things I have to do is be more patient. Whatever it is. I have to stop yelling. I have to always stop trying to control you. I have to be more loving, better expressing of my love. If your kids don't say, I love you enough, why is that? Usually it's because you don't say, I love you enough to them. If you want your kids to change, to be different, start with your own personal example. If you want your kids to stop yelling at you, and my parents would never hit me, but you'd be dead, if you started yelling or swearing at my mother or my grandmother or, my father. My father would, I don't know how he would react because you just wouldn't do that, we were joking with my sister. All of us at one time or another dented my father's car. And so she called up one day, and my brother Mike and I are home, and she's 10 years younger, and she was just 17, just getting her license, and she hit something. It wasn't bad. And she goes, oh, what's Dad going to do? He's going to kill you. Oh, yeah, you're dead. I wouldn't call him if I. And so she's getting worried, and we're going no, he's going to do two things. He's going to say, are you all right? And then, don't worry about it. It's only a car. And we all knew he was going to say that because those two sentences, what he used on me when I dented his car with me in it, and when my brother dented his car without him in it. It was the same thing. Are you guys all right? Yeah, okay, fine. Any major problem? It's okay, we'll get the car fixed. We'll fix it up. Don't worry about it. And you move on. And when you have the kind of assurance that that's how my parents are going to treat me, then I don't have to lie. I don't have to avoid. My sister did that when she was a kid. Mike and I were growing tomatoes, and every day we would go out and pick the fresh tomatoes. And so she and a girlfriend of hers went out. They're 10 years younger than me. And so we were about 13, 14, and she's about 3 or 4, and she picked the green ones. And so she comes into the house, she goes to my grandmother, are green tomatoes good? She says, oh yeah, but we have to let them grow, and when they turn red, then we pick them and when we eat them. And so we thought nothing of it. About an hour later, Mike and I went outside to pick a few tomatoes. None are there. All the green ones had been picked by my sister and her friend Joni, and they buried them in a hole because they didn't want us to know where they were. So I was like, okay, where'd you put them? And we ended up with about 3 gallons of piccalilli made by my grandmother, who turned them into something that you could do something with. And Becky learned a lesson, and Mike and I learned a lesson that you never trust little kids or have unrealistic expectations. And my grandmother did what grandmothers do. She made a bad situation much better and calmed everybody down. And so that's the kind of attitude you have to have as an adult. So sit down and talk with them. Talk first about how you have to grow, how you have to change, how you have to be better, and then help them to understand, okay, now it's your turn. What do you think? What should you do better? And if they're stuck, give them a hint. And also, if you're stuck, your kids will quickly give you a hint as to how you could be better. You got to stop doing this, Mom, or whatever it is. So, just find those ways. And that's the best preparation for the sacrament of penance. How am I a better person? Remember, we talked about how do I know what sin is? It's how am I being responsible? How am I treating myself? How am I taking care of myself? How am I brushing my teeth? How am I taking showers? How am I exercising? How am I doing my homework? How am I doing my best, whatever my best is in school? How am I doing a couple of the chores that really would be helpful for me to do at home? Not the 25 chores that Mom wants done or Dad wants done, but what are the couple that will help me to be a better person? And if I start to do those, then what are a couple more that I can do. So just take it easy and take it slow, and help your children to come, with a sense, And sometimes, if you don't do it, we quickly discern that you didn't do your homework, because your kid will ask, "Hey, have you done anything that you'd like to have God forgive?" "Nope." "Have you ever had?" "No, I don't do any sins." And it's like, okay, let me meet your mother Mary, or your father Joseph, and we'll sanctify them. But sometimes it's and that the only reason why they don't commit any sins is because they have no sense of sin, and that's because you didn't give it to them. And so it's the same thing. Make sure that your children don't come when they're in third grade or fourth grade and tell me that they don't go to church on Sundays. Because my first thing will be to say, "You live across the street?" "Oh, you don't? How do you get to church?" It's like, "Oh, well, Mom or Dad brings me when I come." And it's like, okay, why don't you go tell Mom and Dad that it's their sin if they don't bring you to church, it's not yours. And we put it right back into your lap. And I don't mean that in a bad way or to get you into trouble, but it's more of, our kids have enough things to worry about, not having to teach their fathers how to stop drinking or smoking, or their mothers how to pay attention to them or bring them to church or do this, that, or the other thing for them. It's how do we do this together? So put it all together and some great things are happening. Any questions on what we're doing Thursday, how you're going to be ready to help your kids, how you're going to help them to understand if there's something they think is serious, put it into perspective for them. If they come to any one of us, we'll do the same thing, to help them to understand that, all kids do stuff, and sometimes they'll do it because they're afraid. They're afraid to tell the truth, so they lie. And y'all know they're lying, and they get into bigger trouble when they do. They just don't understand that. And so I was telling them, just let Mom and Dad know what really happened. And if you get in trouble, you get in trouble. But you want them to know the truth, and you don't want to not trust you. So a lot of times it's helping kids understand the implications, the ramifications of what they do when they sin. But for the most part, they're not doing anything that's going to put them in hell. They're not rejecting God. They're not rejecting you. They're not doing, they're not going around killing your cats or your plants, or, they might be feeding broccoli to your dog. One of the worst things you could do. No, worst thing is chocolate, but feeding broccoli to your dog is not punishable offense of going to the fires of hell. Getting rid of the broccoli as easily as you can works. I agree with George H.W. Bush that once he became president, he banned broccoli from the White House. He says, now that I'm president, I can do that. That's my privilege. I don't like broccoli. Barbara does. Too bad for her. She can eat her own broccoli. I'm not eating it. And so it came off the White House menu. And sometimes we just have to do that. We just take stuff off our own house menu because we don't like it or we don't prefer it. And if I like chocolate pie and you like pumpkin pie, that's your loss. I don't eat pumpkin pie. My grandmother every Thanksgiving had to make chocolate pie, or my brother Mike and I, because we didn't eat pumpkin pie or lemon meringue pie. Talk about something that's really gross. And again, it's all personal taste and stuff. And we always have to look in and see that some of the personal tastes we have are just that. They're what I like. And if you don't like it, it's your problem, unless I try to make it mine, and then I'm crazy. But just, over this next week or so, have fun with them. Well, we're going to be setting up in the future for kids in launch and onwards. There'll be a second penance time in March, and just closer to First Communions and stuff, and you can pick and choose if you want them to come to that. And then starting next year, we're going to do first penance. We're going to move it into the end of first grade. And then we'll have times in this time, November and in March, where we'll do penance services for kids in launch. And so if kids want to come, that's fine. Don't make your kids drag you to church. I had somebody last year, some guy came to church, and he hadn't been here, I don't know, for years and years and years. I said, well, what brings you in today? He said, well, my daughter wanted to come to confession, so I came with her because they had to drive her here. And I said, well, I figured while I was here, I'd come on in. And so I don't know what we talked about, but then the daughter came in. I says, oh, was that your dad? She said, yeah, I made him come. She says, good going. Keep him coming every once in a while. Invite him to come with you. Yeah. So we're going to quit with that, and we'll see you next Thursday. And then we'll begin again in January. And in January, February, March, we're going to look at First Communions. And then we're going to do First Communions this year. We'll have 2 weekends, the last weekend of April, the first weekend of May, as the choice times for you and your family to bring your children to First Communion. If those times don't work for you, we'll do something individually as a family for you to set up your own time for First Communion, but it won't be as fancy as it is for the bigger group. And then around sometime in June, around Corpus Christi or something, we'll do the same thing we did this year, which was to have a kind of a mass where all the kids can come to it. They can wear their dresses or their suits again, and we'll serve you breakfast and stuff, and just have a chance for everybody to be together as one big group. And so that's a usual fun way to work it. And last year it went on a little bit too much, and we unfortunately had some people that were not nice, and my problem with people who are not nice to kids, who don't want to see kids at their mass, they're the first ones to complain to me that, oh, kids don't go to church anymore. And it's like, yeah, because people like you drive them away. I have no sympathy for anybody who hates young people and then, like the Pharisees, criticizes those same young people and their parents, of course, because they don't go to church. And it's like, make it a fun time. If I had my way, you'd have coffee and donuts every week after the family mass, because that's part of the celebration. If you feed them, what did the father of the prodigal son do? Put sandals on his feet, put a robe on his back, put a new jewelry on his fingers, kill the fatted calf, and let's have a party. Because this kid who was dead to me, who was lost, is back, and we celebrate. And that's how every one of our penance services should be. A time where kids get a sense that it's good, it's valuable, it's holy, it's wholesome, it's sacred for us to come and celebrate being forgiven and starting again. Okay. Good night.